Is Ashley Thompson, and today I'm going to discuss with you about a very controversial topic around the world known as assisted suicide. I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit of a story just so you can kind of get an understanding of where I'm coming from. A man has been diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. He can no longer breathe on his own and he suffers extenuating pain when trying to do anything physical. This is making it very hard for him to do anything on his own. He now has to depend on his family and outside caregivers to do the simple activities of daily living. He has come to the point where his only thought is this any way to live? He knows about assisted suicide, and as his illness, discomfort, and disability progresses, he leans more towards the idea of ending it all. This story may seem simple for people who have never experienced anything like it, but it is a common issue that happens on a daily basis throughout the world. People who have the desire to die are going to end their lives either way. The right to life implies the right to death, and family and friends who are suffering while witnessing their loved ones in pain. Someone who's diagnosed with a terminal illness that causes high amounts of pain and forces them to be disabled realize at some point in time that assisted suicide is a moral act for physicians to perform and should be legalized. I'm going to start also by introducing you to a couple professional and highly looked upon people in the industry who are speaking on this. Some of them are authors, some of them are actually people who run the Dignita Center, which is in Switzerland, where assisted suicide is legal. Assisted suicide is also legal in Oregon, and I'll get to that later on in the speech. So, people who are suffering from a terminal illness, pain, and disability cannot end their lives comfortably and die with dignity, but are instead forced to die in an unpleasant manner. Thomas A. Bowden, who's the author of Individuals Should Have a Legal Right to Choose Death, gives a perfect example for this argument. He explains how Percy Bridgman, who was a Nobel Prize-winning physicist, was entering the final stages of terminal cancer when he decided to commit suicide by shooting himself. Bowden uses a direct quote from the suicide letter that Bridgman left. It stated that it is not decent for society to make a man do this to himself. Probably this is the last day I will be able to do it myself. This was a very strong sentence, even though it doesn't make complete sense sometimes when you read it. Basically what he's saying there is not decent for society to make a man kill himself over this when there is plenty of things out there that could help him, and pretty much he's saying this is the last day I will do it myself because he is committing suicide. He was trying to make a difference through his death. If he were offered the choice of assisted suicide, he would have chosen it, but that was not available to him. No legalization of assisted suicide means that there are no safeguards in place to ensure that these patients really wanted to die. Given this information, the lawmakers must realize that acts of suicide are done whether or not the act is legal, but in assisted suicide, choices are given to the person to better their lives before it is even an option to be considered. The government should make assisted suicide a controlled practice rather than just simply making it illegal. I think we really need to look into what is going on through these people's minds. Why do they want to kill themselves? Well, I mean, I know there are cases out there where people are depressed and things are going wrong in their life, but this is not what we're talking about at all, and please do not get me wrong on this topic. I know it is very controversial and very heavy-weighted on each side. There's people who highly look upon it and people who highly look down on it. So let me just explain to you. Most people who are looking for assisted suicide are going to be people who have a terminal illness, who are suffering from pain, and who are completely disabled. No one wants to have everyone around them taking care of them. They want to enjoy their life with their family, not be, laying in a bed, constantly having to ring a bell, having someone bring them everything, having someone take them to the bathroom. So for my speech, I just want you to put yourself in those people's places and imagine how you would feel if this was going on. Okay, the Declaration of Independence states that each person exists as an end in himself, and that there is a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Bowden argues that if a terminal disease or any other tragedy happens that takes all joy out of life, leaving someone to suffer in pain, that should give that person the right to commit suicide by means of assistance. It is complete contradiction for the Declaration of Independence to state that he or she has the right to live life, than the government to say that he or she does not have the right to commit suicide. People are no longer living by rights when it comes to life or death, but rather by the permission of the government. What lawmakers must grasp is that there is no rational basis upon which the government can properly prevent individuals from choosing to end their own lives. So instead, the government should be assisting those people who wish to be put to death in making the correct decisions in their path of life, rather than, because maybe they do still have a quality of life. Okay, so they're in a wheelchair. They have a little bit of pain. Let's get them on a pain regimen, and, they're in a wheelchair. They can still move a little bit, and they can still interact with people. It's not that bad. We're talking about people who are bedridden, cannot do anything by themselves, suffer from complete pain, can barely speak to tell you that they're suffering from that much pain. It just becomes intense. And it is a good choice for them to be able to know that they have the choice to do assisted suicide. My third topic that I'm going to talk to you about is family and friends should not have to suffer while witnessing their loved ones in pain. In most cases, families are going to want to see their loved ones rest in peace and not suffer lifelong pain. Simon Jenkins, who's an author of Denial of the Right to Die is Sheer Religious Primitivism, speaks of parents in Britain that watched their 23-year-old son, Daniel James, suffer from a crippling accident that he had gone through. Daniel's parents state that they would rather put him out of his misery and pain by taking him to Switzerland, where I told you earlier assisted suicide is legal, than watch him suffer any longer. James stated numerous times that that was what he wanted to do, and his parents fully supported him. People should not have to watch their loved ones suffer. Instead, they should hope for a better road to take. In this case, the better road was assisted suicide. Family and friends of the suffering and dying should be aware of the decisions their loved ones are making to commit suicide through assistance, rather than finding their loved ones have committed suicide in their own ways without the support of anyone. Most cases when someone is diagnosed with a terminal illness that causes high amounts of pain and forces them to be disabled, they realize it is not a healthy, happy way to live for them or people around them. Bowden claims that in most cases, people with terminal illnesses know they are going to die and often seek assisted suicide. With assisted suicide, like I said earlier, there are regulations on it. In Switzerland, what the doctors do is they recommend that you speak to a doctor. They know a bunch of doctors, so they will recommend a doctor that you speak to. They try to get you on a pain regimen. We try multiple doctors, try to see what we can do. If they can't figure out anything, then that's when they will resort to assisted suicide, but not until then. The regulations in Oregon are very high. You must have patients having 2 explicit oral requests to a doctor. 2 doctors must concur the diagnosis, prognosis, and patient capability, a written request witnessed by 2 people who are not family or caregivers to the patient, and the patient is required to take prescription by himself or herself. What is not allowed under this law in Oregon is anyone other than the patient to make the decision for assisted suicide. And the law explicitly prohibits euthanasia, which is the difference between assisted suicide and euthanasia. Is assisted suicide, you're taking the prescription by yourself. Euthanasia, you are being, the drugs are being put in intravenously by someone else. There are many people who prohibit the idea of assisted suicide, and I'm just going to focus on one right now. In the PBS Frontline special, which I watched, called The Suicide Tourist, I do recommend it. It is a very good special. A man on his journey to initiate assisted suicide speaks words of truth about the religious views against assisted suicide. The Suicide Tourist argues that religious congregations say that no one should act as God, for what he has planned is the way things are meant to go, and no one shall try to change his works of life. But what about when physicians fight to keep a premature baby alive when it is born and not breathing? Physicians are then acting as God in the manner as well as God's plans was for that baby to die. So this is definitely a good thing, and I also got a quote from an Episcopal bishop, John Selby Spong. He admits that his deepest desire is always to choose death with dignity over a life that has become either hopelessly painful and dysfunctional or empty and devoid of all meaning. That is one of the largest controversies on it all, which I do understand. I am a religious person too, and I do believe that God does have plans. But I do not think that we should make God seem like a horrible person by saying that he would want us to suffer horribly like that. I don't think that is his plan at all. Assisted suicide illegalization is an issue around the world. It causes numerous problems, but most of all, it is inhumane. It is unethical to stand by as a physician and know that patients are suffering and do nothing to put an end to their despair. The wish to commit suicide is most understandable when it develops over time rather than overnight. Patients have considered assisted suicide because of prolonged pain, agony, and loss of personal dignity, along with terror of terminal illness. Family and friends should know when their loved ones are passing away, rather than finding them in a gruesome manner. And if assisted suicide was legal, it would help a good portion of people who are suffering and have lost all hope to die with dignity. The right to life should indefinitely permit the right to death. I understand that this is a very controversial topic, and I am very open to your questions and look forward to hearing them on the blog below. I'm going to post a list of statistics from the Oregon's assisted suicide so that you can see how many people are really pursuing this. Thank you very much for letting me speak to you about my topic, and I really hope that I've persuaded somewhat of an idea into your guys' head about making this a legal act in the United States. Thank you very much again, and I am very open to questions. Have a nice day.